She hadn't believed in coincidences for years until she found herself trapped in a silent elevator with a man who looked exactly like the husband she had lost. His eyes, the familiar tilt of his smile, even the faint scar above his brow. It was as if grief had conjured him back from the dead. And then, in a voice that shook her very soul, he said words that would unravel everything she thought she knew. Hello, my friends. I am Olivia, and this is Olivia's Love Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. I used to believe life had a quiet rhythm. My mornings were predictable, coffee brewing in the corner of my tiny kitchen, the faint hum of the city outside my window, and the sound of my cat padding across the wooden floor. After Mark's death 3 years ago, I had built a life of careful routines, protective little walls around my heart. Love, I told myself, was a luxury I could no longer afford. I was safe there, in the gray light of predictable days. Most people in the office said I looked fine. Resilient was the word they used. But resilience has a way of masking emptiness. Some nights, when the apartment was too quiet, I would sit by the window, clutching an old photograph of Mark, tracing the lines of his face, the curve of his lips, wishing just for a moment that he would appear. I'd tell myself it was nothing more than a trick of memory, a ghost I conjured from loneliness. That Tuesday morning started like any other. I wore my great coat, buttoned high against the biting wind, and stepped into the elevator of the office building. I pressed the button for the 12th floor, the familiar hum of the machinery lulling me into routine comfort. But then the doors slid open at the 2nd floor, and he stepped in. My breath hitched before I even registered what I was seeing. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and he moved with a calm that mirrored Mark's exact gait. His hair had the same careless sweep, slightly curling at the ends, the same shade of brown that caught the morning light. And his eyes, those eyes, emerald green, sharp, yet soft in that way that had always made my heart ache. For a heartbeat, I thought my mind was betraying me. Impossible, I whispered to myself, forcing my gaze down to the scuffed tiles at my feet. But the elevator's soft hum betrayed no illusions. He was real. And then, just as the doors began to close, the elevator shuddered violently and jerked to a halt between floors. The lights flickered, plunging us into dim shadows. I could hear the faint creak of the cables above, the metallic groan that made my stomach twist. My hands flew to the railing, heart hammering against my ribs, and I realized I wasn't alone. He turned toward me, calm, as if the world had stopped for him 1,000 times before. Our eyes met, and my knees threatened to buckle. He smiled, that smile, and whispered my name. Olivia? Time seemed to stop. My pulse thundered in my ears. Every rational thought fled, leaving only the impossible truth pressing against my chest. And then, in that suspended silence, he spoke again. The sound of his voice, soft, familiar, yet impossibly wrong, sent a shiver down my spine. My fingers tightened on the railing as I struggled to form words. It can't be you, I stammered, though the elevator's cramped space and the faint metallic scent of machinery made me question everything. He stepped closer, and I could see the subtle tremor in his hands, the same nervous tick Mark had whenever he was about to say something important. Olivia, I know this is shocking, but I need you to listen, he said, his eyes searching mine for some flicker of recognition, some permission to speak. My chest ached with longing and confusion, the years of grief crashing into this impossible moment. I wanted to run, to escape this cruel trick of fate, but the elevator's walls pressed in, and I couldn't tear my gaze away. You died, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Mark, You're gone. I watched you." My throat closed and I swallowed hard. "I watched you die." He flinched at the words, a shadow crossing his face. "I know, Olivia. I know what you've been carrying. And I am so sorry. For everything. For leaving you. For the silence. For the years you suffered thinking I was gone." A hollow ache opened in my chest, and I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. My mind screamed at me to demand answers, to pull back, to remind myself that this had to be impossible. But there was something in his presence, an undeniable pull that reminded me of late-night talks, soft laughter in the kitchen, the way he had held me when I was too tired to stand. "Then how? How are you here?" I asked, my voice trembling. I I don't understand. Everyone said—" "I was in hiding," he interrupted, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. "There were things, dangerous things I couldn't explain at the time. I couldn't tell anyone, not even you. I thought I was protecting you, but I see now I only hurt you more." My stomach twisted. Memories, grief, longing, all tangled together in a tight knot. The elevator was silent except for the soft hum of stalled machinery, our breaths mingling in the small space. I could feel my heart teetering between disbelief and hope, anger and love, past and present. You're saying you're alive," I whispered, incredulous, as if the words themselves were fragile enough to shatter at any moment. He nodded, his gaze locked on mine. "Alive. And I've been trying to find the right moment, the right way to tell you. But apparently, fate doesn't give us warnings. It just pushes us together when we least expect it." I wanted to scream, to demand the truth, to cling to him or push him away. My mind raced through the years I had spent grieving, the empty dinners, the silent apartment, the way I had slowly convinced myself that I had to let go. And now, here he was, breathing in the same space, whispering words that felt like they were meant to both heal and wound me at the same time. And then, as the elevator shuddered again, we were thrown into darkness, the lights cutting out completely. I felt his hand brush mine, not intentionally maybe, or maybe on purpose, and I gasped. His voice, soft and close, broke the silence. "Olivia, there's something you need to know before the doors open. Something I never told anyone, not even you." My heart skipped, and my pulse raced. I couldn't breathe. Whatever he was about to say, I knew it would change everything. The darkness in the elevator pressed in around us, thick and suffocating, leaving only the sound of our breaths and the faint creak of the stalled machinery. My hand hovered near his, frozen by a mixture of fear and anticipation. His words, whispered in the shadows, hung in the air like a delicate, dangerous thread. I wasn't supposed to survive that day," he said finally, his voice low and strained. "There was an accident, something that could have ended everything. I barely made it out alive, but I couldn't come back, not yet." I could feel my heart clench, every memory of grief and despair tightening like a vice. What do you mean, not yet? You let me think you were dead." My voice shook, a mix of anger and disbelief. I mourned you. I buried you in my heart." He flinched at my words, the guilt etched into his features. "I know, and I am so sorry, Olivia. Every day I thought of you, every moment I longed to explain, but it was too dangerous. I couldn't risk anyone finding me, including you." I swallowed hard, tears welling in my eyes, the familiar ache of longing and betrayal crashing over me in waves. Part of me wanted to throw myself at him, to hold him and never let go. Another part, smaller but fiercely protective, wanted to scream, to tell him to leave, to punish him for abandoning me when I needed him most. Why now? I whispered, barely audible over the hum of the stalled elevator. Why appear here? Why me? He hesitated, and in that brief silence, the elevator felt impossibly small, like the world itself had shrunk to just the two of us. Because, he said finally, his voice trembling, I've realized that running doesn't protect anyone. It only prolongs the pain. And I need you to understand why I did it. I need you to know the truth before it's too late. My chest ached as I tried to absorb his words. Every fiber of my being screamed for answers, for clarity, for the comfort of certainty. But instead, I felt dizzy with the weight of secrets, lies, and years stolen from me. Then the elevator shuddered again, violently this time, and the lights flickered back on, revealing his face in sharp, startling clarity. I could see every line, every scar that mirrored the man I had loved, every trace of suffering that told a story he had never shared. And then he spoke the words that made my entire world tilt. Olivia, there's someone coming for me, someone who won't let me live freely, not until I make a choice. I didn't tell you before because I didn't want you to get hurt. But now you need to know, and you need to decide if you'll trust me or let me go again. My breath caught in my throat. The elevator felt like it had shrunk even further, and I was acutely aware of every beat of my heart, every rapid thump of fear and longing intertwined. The man who looked like my dead husband, my Mark, was alive, yet the danger, the secrets, and the years of loss loomed between us like an impenetrable wall. I wanted to ask 1,000 questions, to demand explanations, to collapse in his arms. But there was no time, no safety. The doors began to creak, a mechanical groan warning us that the world outside was ready to invade this fragile bubble we were trapped in. And just as the elevator shuddered one last time, I realized the truth. The secret he carried wasn't just about survival. It was about everything that had changed while I mourned, about choices I never imagined I would face, and about a love that was now hanging by the thinnest of threads. The elevator doors began to creak open, and a cold draft swept in, carrying the distant sounds of hurried footsteps and muffled voices. My pulse raced, a chaotic rhythm that matched the storm inside me. Every instinct screamed to run, to cling, to demand answers, yet fear and longing rooted me to the spot. He took a step closer, his hand brushing mine once again, this time intentionally. The warmth of his touch reminded me of late nights spent talking quietly in the dark, of laughter spilling into the quiet corners of our apartment, of the life I had imagined would always be ours. "There's no time to explain everything now," he whispered, his green eyes locking onto mine, filled with desperation and hope. "But I need you to know the truth. I survived because someone powerful, needed me gone. They've been searching, and I've had to stay hidden. I couldn't let them find you, Olivia. That's why I left, and why I stayed away." A torrent of emotions swept through me. Grief, relief, anger, longing, and love so sharp it almost hurt to breathe. "All this time," I murmured, voice trembling, "all these years, you were alive, and I thought I was alone." He shook his head slowly, a pained smile touching his lips. "You were never alone. Not really. I watched over you from afar. I couldn't touch you, couldn't speak to you, but I never stopped caring." His hand found mine fully now, his grip firm, grounding me in a reality that felt both impossible and undeniable. Tears spilled freely, and I laughed, a shaky, breathless sound, because the relief, the disbelief, and the overwhelming love collided inside me. "Mark, I don't know if I can forgive you," I whispered, the words heavy with everything I had carried. "You don't have to forgive me," he said softly, brushing a tear from my cheek. "You just have to let me prove that I never stopped loving you, that the years I was gone, they were filled with longing for you, and I will spend the rest of my life making this right, if you let me." The elevator groaned again, but this time it felt less like a trap and more like a cocoon, holding us in a fragile, suspended world. I looked at him, the man I had mourned, the man who had returned, the man who now held my hand, and I felt the walls I had built around my heart begin to crumble. I don't know if I can be sure," I admitted, my voice catching, "but I need to try. I need to know that this is real, that you're real." He smiled, the kind of smile that could heal years of pain, and nodded. "I'm real, Olivia, and I'm not going anywhere this time." As the elevator doors slid open fully, the world outside rushed in with its noises and chaos. But inside, it felt like time had stopped just for us. I inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of years lift slightly from my chest. Whatever dangers awaited, whatever secrets still lingered, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I had a second chance at the love I thought I had lost forever. And as we stepped out of that elevator hand in hand, I realized that some miracles are worth waiting for, and some loves are too deep, too true, to ever be erased, even by death itself.